Hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. I'm starting a new thing this year. Hopefully it stays consistent where I upload one video book review, if not every single week of the year, then almost every single week. My official goal for this year for booktube was to just upload one video a week, but I decided to why not be a little bit more ambitious, and so I'm dedicating Thursdays of this year as of right now to these book reviews. I wanted to kick off the year on a strong note while I'm able to. I have a whole outline of how I'm going to do these book reviews every single week, and I am very excited to try it out and see how long it lasts. Hopefully the whole year, but we'll see. But for right now, we're going to go strong because we're feeling the high of a new year, you know? But to kick off this new year, I will be reviewing the first book that I read in 2024, which was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is a thriller, and I have read every single book by Riley Sager up to this point. This was the last release that I needed to read of his to be all caught up with his works before his newest book comes out in June. But this book came out in June of 2023, so about 6 months ago, and I'm only 6 months late to reading it because I feel as though most other people that I know have already finished it. But that's okay. We're here. My opinion is probably a little bit unpopular, so I'm excited to dive into it a little bit. I got this book, of course, from Book of the Month. I have every single Riley Sager book owned from Book of the Month, so when I saw they added this one as an add-on, I think it was an add-on last July after not picking it for their June selection, I knew I had to grab it because my brain just likes the organization of having all of his books look the exact same with the Book of the Month logo on the side, the matching like color box up here, all those fun things. I will give my rating of this book after I give y'all the synopsis because I need to build up the tension a little bit because again, I think my review is a little bit unpopular, which I love to see personally. But this is a thriller about a woman named Kit who is an at-home caregiver for elderly people. She is given this new assignment after being suspended for 6 months from her job with this woman whose name is Lenora, who grew up being accused of having murdered her family when she was a teenager. So she still lives in the same town. She is in her mid-70s, I believe, has suffered multiple strokes, and needs an in-home caregiver. Her last nurse left, and so they needed to find somebody new, and Kit was pretty much stuck in this job or else she would have been fired from her position because of her suspension and the details of what happened that led her to be suspended. She was kind of forced to take this case if she wanted to kind of get back in the good graces of her job. The nursery rhyme that was said about Lenora, who is the elderly woman in this big old house at the top of this cliff, is that at 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. So the entire book pretty much follows Kit as she is navigating life as a caregiver in this huge mansion where something doesn't quite seem right. The nurse who worked there before her has mysteriously disappeared, it turns out, because all of her stuff is still in her room, which is Kit's new room as the caregiver, which is connected to Lenora's room. She believes that there is something more going on at this house and tries to find the answers as to what is going on. This book is very twisty, it's fun, it's interesting. It also takes place in the 1980s, which is not something that I had originally caught when I first started the book, as someone who doesn't read the synopsis of my books before diving into them most of the time. But that's a general description of this book without diving too deeply into any spoilers. This will be a spoiler-free review, I believe, and if there does end up being a spoiler, I will go ahead and mark it on the screen right here down below. Content warnings for this book do include murder, death of parent, death, pregnancy, suicide attempt, and suicide. So there are several content warnings for this book. I do like to include them in my reviews and reading vlogs, so that way they are easily accessible to anybody who might be watching this video. What I think is a popular opinion compared to Goodreads, which currently has this book sitting at a 4.15 star rating. For a thriller, I feel as though it's a very high rating. Words are hard, but also it has 157,000 ratings currently. So the fact that it does sit at above a 4-star is pretty impressive, I think, in my opinion, just based off what I've seen in my several years on Goodreads. But I gave this book 3.5 stars. And that might be my own fault, because I thought too hard about this book as I began reading it. This is a thriller that sits at 382 pages. So it is a little bit of a longer side, especially compared to a lot of thrillers nowadays, in my opinion, or at least what I tend to gravitate toward. 382 is pretty long. The thrillers that I tend to read are normally anywhere between 250 and 350, and normally they average at around 300 pages. Like, I'm currently reading a book by Rachel Hawkins, and almost all of her books lay right around 300 pages, at least in the copies that I have. This book is a little bit on the longer side, and for a thriller, I feel as though if you can't keep the momentum captured throughout the entire plot, you will start to lose people, you will start to lose me, and that is kind of what happened with this book. It wasn't that there was ever anything not happening with the plot, but I did feel as though I started to get a little bit bored at times, especially maybe because of the isolated setting of this house. We don't really ever leave this house. We do a couple of times for a little bit, and there is some contact with the quote-unquote outside world, especially in the beginning of the book, but we are stuck in this house almost the entire time, and we are pretty limited to just a couple of rooms inside the house. And I feel as though the monotonous, I think is the right word to use, setting of this book kind of led to my boredom a little bit at times. I did read this whole book in one day, but I was on my phone playing games during it a lot because I needed something to do so that I wouldn't drift off while reading the book. Something to keep my attention kind of on what was going on in the book, like a mindless game to play so I could like pay attention, or else I would just sit there in my own thoughts and not listen to what was happening, which is a bummer because his books have not done that before for me. So I don't know if it was just the isolated setting that got me or something else, just the length of the book, the length of some of the chapters. It was a little bit tough to get captivated at times, but that wasn't the case for the whole book. There were some very twisty and interesting and intense moments in the book, which is very common for Riley Sager. He does tend to have some really interesting and intriguing and unexpected plot moments in his books, and that was definitely the case with this one as well. In terms of the characters, Kit, who is our main female character who is trying to figure out the mystery of this house, and Lenora, she was actually not terrible. I feel as though I have seen Riley Sager sort of being infamous for his inability to write women very well, and I agree with that 100%. Lock Every Door, Final Girls, The House Across the Lake, those are 3 of his books that have less than desirable female characters, and that is okay in thrillers for the most part. I like a good and likable character in thrillers. That's a staple of the genre, I feel like, and I do enjoy that in my thrillers. I feel as though Riley Sager sometimes takes it to another level, although Lock Every Door and The House Across the Lake are like my favorite books by him. That and The Last Time I Lied, so it's not a bad thing. Kit was likable, I feel like. She has a past, and something very traumatic happened in her past regarding her mom, and I felt for her, but I didn't dislike her at any moment throughout the book. I feel as though she had good intentions with everything that she did in the book, so I have to appreciate that. Lenora was also an interesting character. Their family past and history was very interesting as well. This book does go back and forth between the present of Kit being with Lenora and then Lenora's family's past, so it's very fun to learn more about the history and the tension leading up to what happened in their house that many years ago when her family died mysteriously, theoretically murder, whatever happened, who knows the truth. So I like the characters. The characters are fine for me. The thing that ended up getting me, like I said in the beginning of my review portion, is that I thought too hard about this book, and I ended up guessing one of the biggest plot twists in this book before even hitting the page 100 mark. I do enjoy playing detective when I read thrillers, but when I guess the plot twist too early, I just feel as though everything is like anticlimactic in the end. Now that isn't to say that I guessed every single plot twist, because I definitely did not. Some of them came very far out of left field in my opinion, and so I struggled with really like gasping and freaking out over them because I didn't even see them coming, but like to the point where it was just super extreme for me and maybe a little bit unrealistic based off everything else that happened in the story. if that makes sense. So unfortunately, this book was not my favorite by Riley Sager. It was not bad by any means. It is tied for my least favorites, but that's not bad because my lowest rated Riley Sager books have been 3.5 stars, which is still above average. So again, I didn't dislike it. I did like it. My battery's dying. 1 second. I read thrillers because I like not knowing the truth. I like not necessarily being able to believe what is being told to us as readers. I like thrillers because of the intense plots, the fast-paced moments, the murder, the death, the crime. I love those aspects of thrillers. And while The Only One Left definitely had those moments in them, the length of the book alongside my lack of surprise at one of the biggest plot twists in the book, as well as the dragging moments in the plot, sort of left me feeling not super excited at the end of it. I was happy to have it done and liked it enough, but it is definitely not my favorite Riley Sager. My favorite Riley Sager, I have to say, currently is still Lock Every Door. I go back and forth a lot over what my favorite book by him is, but I do still think it's Lock Every Door, which is also kind of an unpopular opinion, I believe. But I love that book. So I like this book. It's not my favorite. I do think my opinion is a little bit unpopular, but regardless, I did have a good time with it overall. Just not my favorite book by Riley Sager. That wraps up my very long review, but I think my thoughts were pretty clear, so I will take it. This is my first book review for my channel for the year. If there are any books that you would like to see me read and review, feel free to comment down below and let me know. The Only One Left was a fun read, not my favorite again, but I did have a good time with it. I would recommend it if you have read some of his other books. I do think he has some interesting twists in this one that were definitely unexpected, and I would definitely recommend Riley Sager as an author in general. I have loved almost all of his works, truly, and I am very excited for his newest release, which comes out in June of 2024. It's gonna be super good, I think. I've heard he has a male main character in this one, I think, if I'm not like mixing things up in my brain, which it will be a first for him, so I think it'll be really fun. But that's all that I have for this book review. If you've also read this book, feel free to comment down below and let me know your thoughts on them. I would love to hear what you thought about this book and any others by him that you might have read. But that's all that I have for this book review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.